How's it going, everybody? Comic book artist and writer Will Robson here. Now, on my last video, we covered what was in my actual art portfolio, which eventually led me to working for Marvel Comics. Today, we're going to cover what actually happened during my portfolio review with CB Cebulski. So, without further ado, let's check it out. What I did was I put that portfolio together, I printed it out, and I put my freaking email everywhere all over it, and I headed to the convention. And I got to the convention, and I remember freaking out online thinking, oh my god, I bet there's going to be so many people that are trying to hand in their portfolio. I've got to make it to the place to hand it in, otherwise there's going to be, you know, it's going to be all filled up and I won't be able to be a comic book artist. No, it wasn't anything like that. There was plenty of time. I ran there. I ran to hand in my portfolio, and I think I was like the third person to hand it in. So after I handed in my portfolio, I headed to a panel where CB Cebulski was talking along with Ryan Stegman and a bunch of other comic book artists. And I think the topic was about how to break into comics, so clearly I was interested in that topic. Now, before this panel, I had messaged Ryan Stegman a few times because I was a big fan of his artwork, and I always reached out to artists to see if they would give me portfolio reviews, because in my opinion, the best way to get better in comics is to have a professional looking at your work and seeing where your flaws are. It's so hard to see the flaws in your art when you're starting out. Even if you're a professional, it's hard to see the flaws in your art. I still today show all my peers my work and say, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Because getting that feedback is critical into becoming a better comic book artist. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because during the panel, I think I got up and I asked a question about portfolios or whatever, and Ryan Stegman answered it. And at the time he said, oh, by the way, that's Will Robson, CB. He showed me his artwork the other day. It's great. You should take a look at it. Which, you know, is a super nice thing to do. No one asked him to do that. Just a really nice and generous thing to do. If you're watching this, Ryan, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So after the panel was done, I remember watching CB and I think it was Heather Antos head over to their booth, which had this big curtain up, right? And they went behind the curtain, and I assume they started reviewing portfolios to see which ones they were going to choose. I was just staring at this curtain, and I realized that it was just a curtain on two poles. It wasn't like they went into a room or anything. And I figured, if I walk to the corner of the convention, I might be able to peek my head around and see what they're looking at. And I did do that. And I was able to see that they were actually going through and reviewing the portfolios. The problem is that a bunch of other aspiring comic book artists that handed their portfolios in as well started gathering around, and there was just a huge clump of us all freaking peering over and looking to see if they were picking up our portfolios or not. So we sort of broke up that crowd, or some security did, and I just waited around, and I saw them finish the reviews and walk away. And then suddenly people started getting calls, right? Like there was like a group of maybe 50 artists, and you'd see like someone get a call on their phone and they're like, oh, and like it was like they were getting beamed up to heaven or something like that, and you were just like, oh, I hope that I'm next. And I remember it got down to the wire because they said they were only going to be doing calls in a certain amount of time, and I think it was like the 55-minute out of an hour of the call that I got mine. I'm pretty sure I was one of the last people to get called back, but my god, the relief of that call, right? And it was somebody who worked there who said, hey, you're going to meet with CB Cebulski after 1 o'clock or something like that, so be there, and he's going to meet him at his booth. So I said, great, I'm going to do that. I left the convention hall. I was so excited. At the time, my wife, well, she was my girlfriend at the time, she was moving all of our stuff out of where we were living to another place. I couldn't be there for moving day because I had to be at this convention to hand in my portfolio. So, thank you very much to my wife for doing that. But I called and I was excited. I was like, I got a call back, and she's like, oh my god, that's amazing. My nerves were killing me. I drank a pint of beer just to like calm myself down, and eventually 1 o'clock rolled around, and I went and I sat down with CB Cebulski. But before I tell you about my portfolio review with CB Cebulski, I just want to interrupt to say, if you're an aspiring artist like I was at the time, my Patreon might be the thing for you. I've designed my Patreon to be a great place for aspiring comic book artists like I was when I was trying to get my portfolio reviewed by Marvel. If you want to use the custom brushes and print-ready comic book pages that I use to draw my comics, along with exclusive videos and exclusive posts talking about my behind-the-scenes process of how I create, and high-res scans of all my Marvel and DC work, then please come and join us over on Patreon. Not only will you get everything for free that's on my digital store, but you'll get full access to my private Discord server where I'm doing portfolio reviews and live art critiques. So if you need professional feedback on your current artwork and help getting your portfolio to the best it can possibly be, then my private Discord might be the most perfect thing for you. I created it because it's something that I would have loved when I was trying to break in. in. There's nothing better than getting someone looking at your work and giving you feedback, especially if it's someone who is at a professional level. But that's not all. All Patreon members get to read issue 1 of my zombie comic, Outbreaks, for absolutely free. And if you're not a comic book artist and you just want to support me, then this is the best way to do it. This will support my channel and it will support all the comics that I make. So please check out my Patreon today. CB was the nicest guy in the world. He started by saying, really nice to meet you, Will. Let me shake your hand. And he shook my hand. He said, I really love your work here. It looks great. And just to hear someone who works at Marvel Comics to say, I love your work. It looks great. It made all those years of trying to break in, spending all those long nights, learning anatomy, learning figure drawing, just everything, all worthwhile. I felt so vindicated in that moment. So he flipped through my portfolio a couple of times as he talked to me, and one of the things he said to me was, so who are your biggest art influences? And I come to realize that he asked that because I think a lot of people, when they show portfolios, they probably just look at one, maybe two artists that they really like a Jim Lee or a Greg Capullo or something like that. I'm guilty of that in my first stuff. You could see the Greg Capullo influence in my work. They wanted to see if you had different interests and that you were going to be your own voice in the business and not eventually just be a carbon copy of someone else, because the comic book industry loves uniqueness. It didn't used to. It used to be, please draw in the Marvel style, but that's not so much the case anymore.
One of the first questions I ask artists when I'm looking at portfolios is, so who are some of your influences? And they'll list a couple. And then I'll be like, oh, but you also like Dave Stevens. You like Olivier Coipel. You like Terry Dodson. How did you know that? It's very obvious from your line work. And that's something that it's natural, it happens. But to become a talented artist, to really become a professional who's going to have a style of their own, you have to learn to break the border between the art you love and who you wanted to draw like and who you are as an artist. There is a fine line between inspiration and imitation. There's no problem with that. We all start out that way. But you have to grow beyond that. You have to develop a style on your own.
So I told him that I loved Todd Knock, I loved Greg Capullo, J. Scott Campbell, all these people. And I remember him saying, I like the openness to your art, which was funny because the only reason my art was open, and when I say open, I mean there wasn't a lot of solid blacks or shading. I was only doing that because I sucked at it. I was really bad at it. And every time I showed my portfolio to any other company, they always say you need to work on your shading and rendering stuff. So it was pretty ironic for me that when I just said, forget it, and I chucked it over my shoulder, that I landed work. So if you're out there and you're an aspiring comic book artist and your shading and rendering is no good, try and switch it up. Maybe a colorist could do that heavy lifting for you. Colorist certainly did that for me at the beginning of my career. Thank you, Tamra Bombville. My God, she made my stuff look incredible on Great Lakes Avengers. So we flipped through it, just talked about influences, what I was looking for in terms of work. You know, I said I want to draw interiors, but I'm also really interested in covers. And I'm glad I said that because I did get a few Marvel covers. And I feel like since I showed covers in my portfolio and made it clear that I was interested in actually doing covers, I think that they were open to that, which is great. So he shot my portfolio, he gave me his business card, which I have framed on my desk. I won't show it to you because it's got his contact information on it, but it's a cool little card and it was a life-changing moment for me to receive it. So I have that framed in my studio. Anyway, he gave me his card and he said, contact me in a week. Don't contact me any earlier than that. And when you contact me, contact this email as well. And he told me Ricky Purdon is. Ricky Purdon at the time was a talent scout. I think he still technically is a talent scout, but I'm pretty sure he now has the job that CB had at the time, which is the talent manager at Marvel Comics. He said, I'm going to attach this guy into the email, attach your portfolio again so he can take a look at it, and then we'll go from there. And so I said, great. So I left there, I went and I helped my wife with the rest of the moving. Actually, no, that's a lie. I'm pretty sure she was done with the move by the time I got home. I did wait that week. At the time, I was in between living places, so I moved into my grandmother's house and I set up this weird little studio because I knew that what I was going to be doing was drawing samples for Marvel. So what Marvel did is they took a look again at my portfolio because I gave them a digital copy of it. They said, yep, it looks just as good as I remember it did at the convention, which was a great thing to hear. And he said, would you be now open to doing some samples for us? And when I say samples, I mean they were going to send me a script, a short story, and then I was going to draw it to see how it would be if I drew their stuff. Now this is super important because not only does this show more that I can draw their characters, but it also shows that I can hand in my work in a timely manner. Because because this is a deadline business. You could be the greatest comic book artist in the world, but if you can't hit a deadline, if you can't hand stuff in on a timely manner, you're not going to get hired, because that's what's important. They've got books that need to go on those newsstands every single month, and if you're not there to help them get from point A to point B, then you're going to be left at point C, which is not in the comic book industry. So they gave me the script and a few cover prompts, and then I started the next process of how I broke into Marvel Comics. But let's save that for the next video. In the next video, I will share with you the samples that I created from the script and the covers that I made, and then I will talk about how that eventually led me to becoming a Marvel comic book artist. So thank you guys for watching this video and coming along with me on this journey. I've been really enjoying putting these videos together. If there's any subject or anything you want me to cover about the comic book industry or my journey through it, just leave a comment below and that could be the subject of my next video. So thanks again everybody, and remember, keep making comics. Hey everybody, thanks for watching, thanks for following along. If you want to follow me anywhere else, then check me out on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. Anywhere there's social media, you're most likely to find me. I also just want to take a quick second to say that coming April 1st is the next issue to my zombie comic Outbreaks. It's a really fun one, and we've got an amazing artist on the main cover. You will not believe the superstar that's going to be drawing the cover for issue 3. So head to my website, speechcomics.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I will let you know when we go live on April 1st. Thanks again.